Hey, it's Riley's Redzone here, telling you that this video is a segment from my podcast, The Redzone Review, which aired on June 11th. The podcast is now available on a plethora of your favorite podcasting services. I will try to get it on Apple soon. You can also follow me on Twitter at Riley Redzone for updates about the channel and when things are coming out. And also, most importantly, make sure you follow the podcast on YouTube and subscribe and have your notifications on, so when I live stream, you'll get a notification that it is happening and you can join the stream and comment, and I can answer your questions and you can be featured in the live stream. With that being said, here are my top 100 players, numbers 80 through 71. Let's get into the first segment, which will be my top 100 players. So this is my new graphic design type of thing. It's going to have this sort of setup for a lot of them, and I put a little ticker on the bottom there so you guys can see that down there. But I'll be covering my number 80 through number 71 in the top 100. As you can see, the thumbnail, which will be the thumbnail for the video, Zach Ertz will be on here, and Mark Ingram will be on here. So, starting at number 80 is Deion Jones, a linebacker from the Atlanta Falcons. In 2019, he had 110 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, and an interception. I think he's a playmaker. I think he's underrated as a linebacker. I think he's got a lot of speed. He's honestly, I think, in my opinion, maybe the best player on the Falcons defense. Grady Jarrett's up there, but I think they don't really have some other good linebackers, so I think he makes a significant impact for their team. At number 79, I have Jaylon Smith, another linebacker, and he's on the Cowboys, of course, and Leighton Vander Esch was injured a lot last year, so it was very important for Jaylon Smith to be there and make a big impact. He had 142 tackles, as well as 6 tackles for loss and 2.5 sacks, which is big impact there. I think as a Notre Dame fan, he was so good. It was sad to see his draft stock go down when he was hurt, but I think that that's even made him a better player, and the Cowboys got a steal on him. I think he'll continue to develop with Sean Lee sort of going out of the way, and then Leighton Vander Esch he's got some injury concerns right now. So I have Jaylon Smith at 79, and at 78 I have another Cowboy, which is Tyron Smith. You may think this is high. He is, I will say, at least declining a little bit, but I still think he's a big top tackle, a big piece of that offensive line, especially with Travis Frederick actually retiring. He's definitely, without a doubt, with him and Zach Martin, leading the way on that offensive line. So I think he makes a big difference. So I think he's a significant player still. He probably won't get any higher than where he is. He's sort of already declining, but I still think he deserves to be pretty high up there. At 77, I have Darius Slay. I mentioned in the one video, I basically went through, because I made the list a few weeks ago before the first video. I made some adjustments to my top 80. So originally I had Darius Slay at 80, but I moved him up to number 77 on my list. So he only had, if you look at the stats, he only had 46 tackles as well as only 2 interceptions. But I think he's a sort of a lockdown corner, and I think it was a great move for the Eagles to go out and get him. It's a big loss for the Lions, so I think that was a great move by the Eagles to go out, get him, and have a number 1 corner. They've had secondary issues for a very long time, so I think it was a very smart move for them to go out and get Darius Slay. 76, I have Earl Thomas. Same thing with Tyron Smith. You may think it's high because he's sort of declining. Had 49 tackles, 2 interceptions in 2019, but I still think he's up there as one of the top safeties. You look at the Ravens secondary, they've got a lot of great pieces, and I think he sort of is like a captain to them to sort of, mature Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey and all those other young corners that they have there. So I think it's a good move for them. They brought him in, and I think, like Tyron Smith, he's on the decline, but I still think he deserves some recognition there. At number 75, I have Kenny Clark, who is a defensive tackle for the Green Bay Packers. You look at his stats here, getting 6 sacks as a nose tackle is just amazing. He also had 62 tackles there, and I think that's just a big presence. They brought in the Smith brothers, and that really helped their pass rush before that, though, so it didn't have much, but I think sort of combines, like I mentioned with Preston Smith, Darius Smith will be hired, not in this episode, I'll even say, he's in the top 70, but you look at those three, and they can sort of bounce off of each other. When one's getting double-teamed, the other can make an impact, and when you have three great players like that, that's when you can start to see a difference as a unit, as an edge rush, so I think that is very significant for them. I think he's one of their better, he's probably the best player on their defensive line, for the Packers. So another defensive lineman at 74, I have Fletcher Cox. Has declined a little bit since when they made their Super Bowl run, but same thing, I think he still deserves recognition. I also don't think you can't go solely off of stats. You sort of have to remember these guys are still there, and maybe though you don't get sacks, you get some nice pressure, you get some pressures on the quarterback, you also get some nice tackles in the backfield, so I think that's very significant. So he had 40 tackles and 3.5 sacks, but I think he's more of a difference maker just overall. Brandon Graham is declining a lot more too. I think he's sort of that leader now on the D-line. I think it was smart though, they did bring in Javon Hargrave, so when Fletcher Cox starts to decline, they can bring him in for, for the future. At 73, I have another Eagle, Zach Ertz. So in 2019, he, same thing, I think declined a little bit, didn't get to 1,000 yards, but he did have 6 touchdowns, which is obviously big. He's one of the top tight ends in football, still top 3 for sure. I think I have him ranked, I have him ranked at 3. You look at the decline in the position after those 3, it's pretty big. So he's still one of the top tight ends in this game. And he's still a difference maker, and honestly, the Eagles' receiving core still isn't that good. They bring in speed, but they don't have that reliable target on the outside, so Zach Ertz brings that presence in the middle, and we know that Carson Wentz sort of likes his tight ends. They run the most, at least last season, they ran the most 2 tight end sets out of any team, so he loves his tight ends, so he'll get more targets this year. 72, we have Joe Mixon. So in 2019, he had 1,137 yards and 5 touchdowns. Sort of broke out last season. The Bengals obviously weren't good. They had the number 1 pick, so they couldn't really rely on their passing. So they went through Mixon, and he did a good job. Was a 2nd-round pick. Has done a nice job over his career, sort of going up. He will be a free agent after this season, but I think they should keep him around. He's a good player. Gets you those touchdowns, big difference maker for the Bengals. This year, he might go down a little bit. I think, though, he'll stay there, even though the passing game will be better. But I think that he's a great player, so I'm ranking him there. And so the last top 100 player for this episode is going to be Mark Ingram, as you see it in the thumbnail. He's number 71 on my list. In 2019, he had 1,018 yards, but the big difference maker is 10 touchdowns. He's just reliable enough to make you sort of feel his presence in the game and get some attention from the defense. So, when Lamar is trying to do his read option, his play action game, the defense is just enough. They will respect Mark Ingram, because if you don't, then he's going to go after you. But I don't think he's a star back, but obviously he gets it done. Obviously they drafted J.K. Dobbins as well, so that's a impact for him, but I think that Dobbins won't be used this year too much, and I think that Ingram will still have another great season for the Ravens.